My story begins harvesting basil from the garden, adding it to the blender with olive oil, pine nuts, and garlic to make the delicious concoction called pesto. This harvesting and my first experience of pesto happened in Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, where I met Sister Gail Warsillow, who loves to sing, dance, pray, and farm. So this is when I first considered religious life. I knew I wanted to teach from this experience. So I moved back home to Kansas City and started teaching 2nd and 3rd grade. In that time frame, I met the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth. Here again, I found that vitality that I found in Sister Gail. And I loved the rhythm of prayer, sharing day-to-day life, whether it was chores or cooking, and then sitting down and sharing our meal and sharing our ministry stories. After 4 years, I made the leap and entered the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth. After my first year of formation, one of the sisters approached me and said, well, would you like to move to Denver and teach there? And being the adventure lover that I am, I said yes. I found myself teaching in an inner city 4th grade classroom. And within the first couple weeks doing a health and nutrition lesson, I posed the question, so where does your food come from? Well, the kids looked at me like I had 2 heads and said, the grocery store, of course. And I was shocked. I knew right then and there God was calling me to really work with youth about where their food comes from and how to care for our earth and for themselves just by eating healthy. I enlisted the help of Denver Urban Gardens, and they came to school and built an in-classroom worm bin for my 4th graders. And part of that process is to feed the worms decomposing food. So they brought a bag of 3-day-old lettuce and mushy tomatoes and carrots and moldy bread. And I proceeded to take a piece of moldy bread, add that lettuce, tomato, and carrots on top, add the next piece of moldy bread, cut it, and say, here's a sandwich, just like what you'd have for lunch, but we're going to feed it to the worms. As soon as that went into the box, the kids went, ew! So I also rehabbed a abandoned school garden, and we started just planting all kinds of lettuce. So when it was time for that lettuce to be harvested, the school chef said, would you like me to do a salad and a salad dressing with the students? And I said, absolutely. They got to enjoy fresh produce right from their garden. And in the process, they saw the whole life cycle of plants, from soil to seed to lettuce to salad and back to compost. So after 2 years in Denver, it was time for me to move back to Leavenworth to finish my formation, and I was a canonical novice. And the community said, well, you did such great work out in Denver working with gardening and earth, would you consider doing a Master's of Earth Literacy or Environmental Sustainability degree from St. Mary the Woods College in Terre Haute, Indiana? And again, being excited about this, I said yes. So I began taking classes. I even did an internship out there at the White Violet Ecojustice Center. And after I made first vows, I started teaching again in Leavenworth at Xavier Elementary and teaching 5th grade. So I had to still work on this master's program, and my thesis became to do a really full-fledged school garden. So we built 6 raised beds. We had 12 fruit trees, and we even recycled an old bathtub by digging a big hole, burying it upright, and cementing a statue of Mary in it. Became our grotto, so we could do May Day celebrations in there. While I was working with my 5th graders, it tied right into the curriculum with the life cycle of plants, which is part of 5th grade, and I started an after-school garden club, and that's where I introduced them to kale chips. Now, kale is a leafy green. You can tear it up in bite-sized pieces, add olive oil and salt, put it on a cookie sheet, bake it, and it comes out crisp and crunchy like a potato chip and is just as delicious. At the same time as making kale chips and working on the school garden, I discovered an organization called Giving Voice for Younger Women Religious. You know, I was still early in my life as a religious, and when I entered with 2 women, and by this time they had both left community. So I knew I needed a support system to increase my spiritual life, enhance my vocation, and just share stories with people who understood my life's journey. And so Giving Voice was that place for me. And as I was meeting these young sisters, I came to discover my current ministry. So Sister Kristen Tomey and Priscilla Torres told me about the Ecojustice Center here in Racine, Wisconsin. And again, being so excited, within 6 weeks, I had interviewed, accepted, and moved here to be the executive director. Now, granted, I was a school teacher for 10 years, so here I am on a working farm. This is, like I said, I should have brought treats. So I have treats in the education center. But she's beautiful. We like you. We have goats, chickens, alpacas, geese, rabbits, cats, ducks, and guinea fowl. I have never worked with any of these animals, so it has been a real challenge and a joy to learn how to take care of the animals, as well as work with the gardens, and we have renewable energy. So our mission is environmental education. So I'm a teacher, but not in a classroom, around 4 core values of community, contemplation, creativity, and cultivation. We do lots of programs, but the one I want to focus on is called Farm Corps. It's for high school students to come, spend their summer, do 12 weeks of work with us, where they learn how to take care of our animals, how to plant, how to grow, how to harvest their produce, and they sell it at market. But best of all, they also get to cook with it. So they too can make some mighty fine pesto, get big grins on their faces, and say, yum.